What's up, Reddit? Need to unload this before I lose what's left of my sanity. Fair warning, it's a long one. I'm Garrett, 25, and I've been renting a room from my parents since I turned 18. Not because I'm some permanently adolescent man-child who can't operate independently. I have a solid job as a data analyst at a fintech firm. I pay every one of my own bills, and I've been putting money aside to eventually launch my own independent financial research platform. I've been paying my parents $500 a month since the day I turned 18. 7 years. Not a single late payment. Most people my age were figuring out how to divide a pizza bill without a calculator. I was already contributing to a mortgage payment. But fine. The housing market around here is a catastrophe. My job is 12 minutes away, and helping my family felt better than handing cash to a landlord who'd never remember my name. It made sense at the time. The problem has never been the money. The problem is my older brother, Donovan, 28 years old, certified life coach. And before anyone asks, yes, certified. He paid $300 for a PDF curriculum and a digital badge from a website that also sells astrology reports and Mercury retrograde survival guides. Donovan is what happens when a participation trophy grows up, does a lot of journaling, and discovers that confidence is a marketable product, even when you've never accomplished anything specific. Growing up, the double standard between us was so obvious, it should have been submitted to an art museum. Donovan crashed the family car at 19. He's going through a transitional period. He just needs support. I left a glass ring on the coffee table. 40-minute family meeting about respect for shared spaces and basic human accountability. Donovan dropped out of 2 universities, cycled through jobs at a rate that would impress a revolving door, launched 6 different ventures that were essentially just different-colored Instagram accounts with different stock photo aesthetics, and through every spectacular collapse, my parents watched with the proud bewilderment of 2 people convinced they were witnessing a misunderstood genius. Donovan's building his empire. He just thinks on a different frequency. He's a visionary. Meanwhile, I've had the same employer for 3 years. I contribute to a 401k, and I can do my own taxes without crying. Apparently that makes me the boring one in the family. About 6 weeks ago, Donovan called my parents in tears. He and his wife Petra were between living situations. That phrase, between living situations, is doing an enormous amount of emotional labor in that sentence. What it actually means is they got evicted. Turns out Donovan's latest enterprise, a $497 online course called Manifest Your Millions, a 6-week journey to radical abundance, had not, in a twist that surprises no one who has ever met Donovan, manifested any millions, or hundreds, or enough to cover rent. My parents didn't even pause. Of course you can come home. Stay as long as you need. No conversation with me. No heads up. No asking whether I was comfortable with any of this. Just, the circus is incoming. Start adjusting. Donovan arrived with Petra, their 2 kids, Isla, 7, and Colton, 4, and a hyperactive golden doodle named Bliss. I want to linger on that for a second. A man who cannot pay rent named his dog Bliss. He curated that name. He thought about it. The cognitive dissonance alone should qualify as an Olympic event. The house transformed from a reasonably functional living environment into a full sensory overload experience within about 48 hours. Kids running laps from 6 a.m. until Mercy intervened, sometime around 9 p.m. Bliss treating every horizontal surface as either a toilet or a chew toy, occasionally both simultaneously. My spare room, where I'd set up my woodworking tools, I build custom furniture as a side project. It's the thing that keeps me from losing my mind. Buried under 17 duffel bags, 2 half-assembled pieces of luggage, and a folding crib that someone had clearly tried to reassemble after not reading the instructions. I work from home 3 days a week. My home office is now my childhood bedroom, where Colton knocks on the door approximately every 11 minutes to ask if he can use my second monitor to watch YouTube. I have started counting the intervals. 11 minutes is accurate, and through all of this, through every morning of screaming kids and a dog that treats my belongings as a personal charcuterie board, I am still writing a check for $500 a month. Donovan's monthly financial contribution to the household, the ambient energy of someone who believes that visualizing wealth attracts wealth. I kept quiet at first. Kids are involved. They're going through a hard time. I'm not a monster. But then, last week, Mum pulled me aside with that specific expression she gets. The one that means she's about to ask for something massive while framing it as a small, reasonable favor. Garrett, honey. She's fidgeting with her bracelet. With Donovan's family here, everything has gotten more expensive. Groceries, utilities, all of it. We were thinking you could pitch in a little more, just temporarily, until he finds his footing. I already knew the number before I asked. I asked anyway. Another $350 a month should cover it. $850 a month. To live in my childhood bedroom in a house that now functions as an unregulated summer camp, operated by people who contribute nothing to its upkeep, plus one dog who has eaten 2 of my good chisels. I told her I'd think about it. Internally, I was doing breathing exercises I learned from a YouTube video I'm now extremely glad I watched. That night at dinner, Dad backed her up with something about everyone pulling their weight in tough times. Donovan, who had contributed exactly nothing, who was currently living there for free with his entire family, who had manifested his way directly into his parents' spare bedroom, looked up from his plate just long enough to say, "Thanks for being a team player, bro." I stared at him for a moment. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. Then Mom casually mentioned that I'd be watching the kids Saturday night. Not a question, an announcement. Donovan and Petra had a vision retreat to attend. I found out later this was a dinner at someone's house where a multi-level marketing presentation had been rebranded as a mastermind session. I said I had plans. What plans? Mom asked, like the idea of me having a personal life was some kind of data entry error she needed to correct. I invented something about helping a friend move. Donovan cut in before I could finish. "Come on, Garrett. The kids love their uncle. It's one night." I caved. I always cave. I don't know why I always cave, but I do, and I'm going to therapy about it once I can afford it. Saturday night, instead of working on the credenza I've been building for 4 months, I chased 2 children and a golden doodle through the house, while Donovan and Petra went to discover a new revenue stream that would also not work. They said 10 p.m. They came back at midnight, visibly satisfied about something. Bliss had, in my absence, and through whatever structural failure had let her into my room, destroyed my good leather apron, the one I use for woodworking. $90 apron, reduced to a sentiment. I'm not saying I've reached my limit. I'm saying my limit called me, left a detailed voicemail, and then Bliss ate the phone. Or, "Hey Reddit. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. Didn't realize how many people were currently trapped in their own versions of this situation. There are a lot of us. We should form some kind of union." Things escalated. Here's the rundown. The morning after the babysitting fiasco, I walked into my room to find Petra going through my filing cabinet. Not casually browsing, actively rifling through it with the focused energy of someone conducting an audit. She jumped when she heard me come in. "Oh, I was just looking for scissors." "There are scissors in the kitchen drawer." There have been scissors in the kitchen drawer since the Clinton administration. I couldn't find them there. Before I could follow that logic to its natural conclusion, Donovan materialized in my doorway. The man has an almost supernatural ability to appear whenever his wife might be held accountable for something. It's less a skill and more a calling. Everything okay in here? Your wife is going through my filing cabinet. His expression shifted into something I can only describe as carefully coached, like he'd workshopped this specific scenario in a seminar. She said she was looking for scissors, man. Let's not make it a whole thing. It's my personal space, Donovan. Would you want me going through your belongings without asking? That's different. We're guests here. You're guests in a house I pay to live in. He did the thing he always does when cornered. He pivoted to a framework. You know, Garrett, this protectiveness you have around your possessions is worth examining. That closed fist energy around material things. That scarcity mindset. And scarcity mindset is the enemy of abundance. There it was, Donovan's catchphrase, the philosophical trump card he plays whenever someone notices that he has taken something that isn't his. He has deployed some variation of this sentence at me approximately 900 times since moving in. I counted. I stopped counting around week 3 because it was affecting my will to live. I didn't dignify it with a response. I walked away before I said the thing I was actually thinking, which was, perhaps a man who is currently residing rent-free in his parents' house at 28 should pump the brakes on the abundance lectures. I'm just spitballing here. That night, heading to the kitchen for water, I overheard Donovan talking to my parents in the living room. I stopped in the hallway. Garrett's always been like this. He just doesn't know how to hold space for other people's journeys. It's honestly a little sad. My mother, I know, honey, but he agreed to the extra rent, so that should help. I did not agree to the extra rent. I said I would think about it. These are different sentences. I know this because I was present for both of them. Donovan, quieter. Also, I have to be honest. Petra doesn't feel entirely comfortable around him. She says his energy in the shared spaces is a lot. She doesn't like being alone with him in the kitchen. I had to put my hand on the wall. Petra, who I had just caught excavating my filing cabinet. Petra, whose dog ate my leather apron. Petra, who I had spoken a combined total of maybe 20 sentences to, almost entirely transactional. That Petra does not feel safe around me. I, who actively reroute my path through the house specifically to avoid unnecessary contact with either of them, am somehow a source of domestic threat. I went back to my room without the water. I lay there for a long time. Next morning, Mom mentioned at breakfast that since I had agreed to the new amount, she'd expect the first payment by Friday. I started to open my mouth. Dad jumped in with something about everyone doing their part during hard times, said with the tone of someone who has rehearsed it. They were running a coordinated play. I've watched it enough times to know there's no winning from inside the scene. Then Mom added, Donovan and Petra need a sitter this weekend. They have a retreat. The whole weekend? Just Saturday through Sunday evening. I can't. I have a prior commitment. What commitment? Donovan asked, through a mouthful of the leftovers I had labeled with my name. A personal one. Mum gave me a look that could have dissolved concrete. Drew shook his head with the slow, disappointed gravity of a man who has somehow cast himself as the moral center of this story. A few days later, I came home to find Bliss had gotten into my room, again, through a door that was closed, which means someone opened it, and had destroyed the second set of chisels I keep on my workbench. When I told Donovan, he shrugged. She's a puppy. She doesn't know the difference between a chisel and a chew toy. She's also not my puppy. This is the third thing this month. Scarcity mindset is the enemy of abundance, Garrett. You can replace tools. For approximately 4 seconds, I understood the entire back catalogue of true crime podcasts. But the thing that actually broke the seal was overhearing Donovan in the kitchen suggesting to my mother that since I had all that money just sitting in an account doing nothing, I want to sit with that phrase for a moment. The stunning nerve of it coming from a man whose savings account is a concept he hasn't fully committed to. I should be contributing some of it to help the family through this difficult stretch. I went back to my room, opened my laptop, pulled up an apartment search, started building a different life. The apartment landscape was grim at first pass. But then I remembered a guy from high school, Fletcher. We'd drifted apart after graduation, got beers occasionally, but that was about it. I sent him a low-expectation text at 11 p.m. asking if he knew anyone looking for a roommate. He replied in 3 minutes. His roommate had just announced he was moving in with his girlfriend. 2-bedroom, $620 plus utilities split. Quiet building. 11 minutes further from work. Light years further from the situation I was in. We met the next day. I accepted before we finished our coffees. Fletcher looked mildly surprised at the speed. I did not explain the full context. We shook hands. The move had to be invisible. I knew if I announced I was leaving, my family would run every manipulation play in their playbook. And they have a full playbook. It has been developed over decades. They run it well. Guilt, ambient crying, strategic health references, the whole production. So I went quiet. I called my bank first, changed passwords and security questions across every account, updated my mailing address. If they were having conversations about my savings at the dinner table, I wasn't leaving any exposed doors. Then I started the slow extraction, a box of books before work, clothes tucked into my car during lunch, extra equipment after my evening shift. Fletcher's outgoing roommate was perfectly fine with boxes accumulating in his living room corner. Normal, decent humans. What a concept. The close call came courtesy of a 7-year-old. Isla caught me loading a box into my trunk one morning. She appeared from nowhere with the investigative instincts of a small detective. "What's in the box, Uncle Garrett?" I aged approximately 3 years, just some old papers I'm donating. "Can I see?" "It's really boring stuff, kiddo. Adult paperwork. I like helping. Tell you what, go ask your mum if she needs help with anything inside." She weighed this offer, then sprinted back toward the house. I finished loading the box with hands that had not fully recovered from the adrenaline hit. Back inside, my parents kept up their routine. Mom mentioning bills when I walked through the kitchen. Dad's new hobby of standing in my doorway with an expression of quiet, martyred disappointment. Donovan delivered what I can only describe as an unprompted TED Talk one evening about how withholding financial energy from the people who raised you creates a measurable karmic burden, which he heard about on a podcast he is also somehow a guest on. The mental gymnastics required for that sentence deserve some kind of structural engineering award. Then came the family meeting about sleeping arrangements. Mum suggested, gently, calmly, as though the proposal were not insane, that since I worked so much anyway, it would probably make more sense for Isla and Colton to have my room, and I could make the storage room downstairs work. I need everyone to understand what the storage room downstairs is. No window. A futon that was acquired during a presidency I was too young to have opinions about. It is directly adjacent to the laundry room, which runs at all hours because Petra apparently processes her inner world through extended fabric softener cycles. "No," I said. Everyone looked shocked. Like the word "no" from me was a software error. I pay rent for my room. I'm not moving to the basement so Donovan's family can have more space. Mum started the wavering voice. Dad did the slow, disappointed headshake. Donovan said I was being resistant to flow, which in his vocabulary means not doing what I want. Petra said, with the particular energy of someone who has rehearsed this line, "Some people simply cannot hold space for a full household." Or, I replied, "Some people cannot handle not receiving everything they want from a person who is paying to live here." Petra's expression did the thing it does. Donovan stood up, We had a brief moment where it became relevant that I am 3 inches taller than him and have been consistently going to the gym, while his own physical fitness routine appears to consist of gesturing expressively during video calls. He sat back down. "This is exactly why your abundance ceiling is where it is," he said. I went to my room, texted Fletcher, asked if I could sleep on his couch while the transition finalized. He said yes immediately, without making it a whole thing, because he is a functional human adult. Operation Quiet Exit was entering its final phase. "Oh, what's up, Reddit? Thanks for all the comments between updates. Reading them has been more therapeutic than anything I've done in the past year." Here's the rest of it. Moving day was 5 a.m. on a Saturday, timed carefully around the Donovan household's morning schedule, which begins no earlier than 9 a.m., because their mornings are dedicated to what Petra calls intention setting, which, from what I can tell, involves sleeping and occasionally posting a sunrise photo with a caption about alignment. Everything had been staged at Fletcher's in increments over the previous 2 weeks. Saturday was essentials only: laptop, remaining clothes, hand tools, chargers, toiletries, the daily life items. And then there was Bliss. The second I started moving bags toward the door, Bliss went fully operational, barking, spinning, applying her full golden doodle energy to the situation with the focus of a dog who has decided this is the most important morning of her life. I'd been bribing her with treats for 2 weeks and had pockets full of them specifically for this scenario. She took the treat and barked. I gave her another. She ate it and barked more. I eventually had to carry her to the downstairs bathroom, deposit her there with a small pile of her favorite chews, close the door gently, and offer her a sincere but whispered apology. I stood in my room one last time after that. Bare walls, empty shelves, bare desk, woodworking corner cleared. I've spent most of my adult life in that room. There was a moment, a genuine one, where something close to feeling happened. Then Donovan's voice came through the wall, telling someone to stop making noise. I picked up my keys and walked out. Fletcher's apartment is nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen where the appliances work, a living room that contains actual silence. I got there around 6:15 a.m. and sat in my car for a bit before heading up, turning my phone to silent while I still had the willpower to do it. I knew exactly what was incoming. When I turned the volume back on 3 hours later, 9 missed calls from Mum, 4 from Dad, 2 from Donovan, which I'm almost moved by, honestly, given that sustained effort is not usually his thing. A text from Petra that read, and I need everyone to absorb this. "I hope you feel good about what you've done to this family's energy." I want that sentence embroidered on a pillow. I want it engraved on a plaque. I want it as the epigraph of my memoir. Mom's texts alone were a 5-act theatrical work. Concern, confusion, hurt, escalating anger, and then the pivot, efficient, practiced, to logistics. "Do you know what this is doing to your father's stress levels?" I called her back that evening, level voice. No escalation. "I moved out. I'm staying with a friend." Without saying a word to anyone? "How could you do this to us?" "Mom, I did say things. Multiple times. In multiple conversations. You chose not to engage with what I was saying." She went through the usual script. It's about the rent. It's about the bedroom situation. We could have worked something out. You ran away like a child. And I waited her out. I've been paying rent here for 7 years. Donovan has paid nothing. I raised concerns, and instead of addressing them, you asked for more money, more babysitting. And then I overheard Donovan suggesting you access my savings. "I'm done." She cried. It almost worked. It is physically difficult for me to hear my mother cry and not immediately try to fix whatever caused it. Almost. I told her I'd return next weekend with Fletcher to collect the last of my things, that I'd signed a lease, and said goodbye while she was mid-sentence. It had to be done, Donovan texted that night. Hope you feel great about abandoning the people who raised you. Real abundance move, I replied. You've lived there for free for 6 weeks with your entire family. When you're ready to discuss what abundance actually looks like, I'm open to the conversation. He sent a voice memo. 47 seconds. I did not listen to it. Dad called 2 days later, asking to meet for coffee. Neutral location, his suggestion. I agreed against the better half of my judgment. He looked tired. I felt genuine sympathy for approximately 90 seconds, right up until we got to the actual agenda item. We're short on the mortgage this month, Garrett. With you gone, there's a gap. Dad, I paid rent here for 7 years. This isn't about rent. It's about being available for your family during a crisis. Donovan is the crisis, Dad. He has been the crisis for 10 years. You've been managing his crises instead of letting him develop any functional life skills. That decision is not something I'm responsible for. He dropped the number. $800 for the month, or things would get tight. I laughed. I'm not proud of it, but I did, and it was genuine. You're asking me to pay more than my old rent, for a room I no longer occupy, to cover costs generated by a person you invited to live there for free. No. He left looking like a man who'd mentally scripted a different outcome for the meeting. Then came the extended family campaign. Donovan and my parents, unable to accept a clean exit, began working their contacts. Inside a week, I'd received calls from 2 aunts, a cousin I barely know, my parents' neighbor who has watched me grow up, and my mother's book club friend who I have physically encountered twice in my life. The version of events they'd been distributing, Garrett abandoned his family during a genuine crisis. They may lose the house. He has savings. He refuses to help. What was absent from this version? 7 years of rent payments, escalating financial demands, the invasion of my personal space, the plan to relocate me to a windowless basement, Donovan's extended freeloading, the discussions about accessing my savings. They had edited together a tidy villain arc featuring me in the lead role. I ignored most of the calls, but I responded to my cousin Wren, who I actually trust, with the complete version of events. She was quiet on the line for a few seconds. Then, yeah, that tracks. Wren did some asking around and came back to me a few days later with information. Dad had received a performance bonus roughly 2 months before I left. The mortgage was not in danger. The $800 emergency wasn't an emergency. It was a narrative device. Then the part that landed hard. Mum had told Wren, in a moment of apparent honesty, that a portion of the money flowing through the household, money from my rent and from other sources, had been quietly redirected toward paying down credit card debt. Not just bad luck credit card debt. Donovan had a gambling problem. Some of the crypto losses were real. The rest was a sports betting app he'd been running for 2 years, and a pattern of online poker losses that his wife knew about and my parents had been covering. They had known. They had been managing it the same way they'd managed every other Donovan crisis, quietly with other people's money, while maintaining the public story of a visionary just finding his path. I went no contact that evening, full block across every channel, phone, email, social media, all of it. I emailed my HR department, asking them not to put through calls from personal numbers they didn't recognize. The flying monkeys kept arriving for another week. I ignored all of them except Wren. According to Wren's ongoing updates, Donovan received a formal ultimatum from my parents. Get a job in 30 days or make other arrangements. He responded by posting a 17-minute Instagram video about how sometimes your closest family members are the ones most threatened by your growth. The comments were full of supportive strangers saying things like, "This is so real," and "You deserve better." Several of the accounts appeared to be bots. A few were other life coaches who understand the assignment. The irony of a man currently housed and fed by his parents, whose past several months had been funded in part by his younger brother's rent payments, posting content about transcending the people who hold you back. I do not have adequate language for it. I have only this post. Whoa. It's been about 3 weeks since the last update. Things look different from here. Fletcher's place is genuinely good. We split the bills down the middle. We respect each other's space. We overlap when it makes sense, and don't when it doesn't. I left a half-finished bookshelf in the living room one evening, and he asked if he could buy it when I was done. That is the domestic environment I needed. Work has improved noticeably. No background noise, no interruptions, no 11-minute knock cycles. I've been putting real hours into the financial research platform I've been building on the side. Nothing public yet, but I have a working prototype, and I showed it to a colleague whose feedback was genuinely useful. Progress is happening. I've also started seeing someone I met at a finance meetup. Early days. Not saying more than that because I'd like it to continue. The family situation. I went back once for the last of my things. Fletcher came with me to keep the visit contained. Mum was in the bathrobe I remember from my childhood. Dad moved through the house quietly, with the energy of someone operating on reduced settings. The place felt different, heavier, like the air pressure had changed. Mum tried to have a conversation in my old room. You could have just talked to us. I told her gently that I had, multiple times, and that she and Dad had not engaged with what I was saying. She cried. I did not cave this time. I have finally, at 25, run out of that particular reflex. Donovan wasn't there. According to Wren, he got a job, sales, entry level, which, given his actual skills, is probably the correct starting point, and one he should have reached about 5 years ago. Petra has pivoted their Instagram content to our family's journey through adversity and renewal, which is outperforming the manifestation content by a considerable margin. People love a comeback narrative, even a fabricated one, even one in which the adversity was entirely self-generated. My parents are adjusting to a new reality. The math doesn't work the way it used to, which means Donovan has to contribute, which means the free ride is concluding whether it feels good or not. That's not a punishment. That's just arithmetic. I still send birthday cards to Isla and Colton. They didn't choose any of this. And when they're old enough to have their own context and their own questions, I'll be reachable. Otherwise, the bridge isn't burned. It's being rebuilt on different terms, from a measured distance, with structural requirements that were not previously enforced. A few things I know now that I wish I'd understood earlier. When a family member invokes family as the reason you should do something they would never do themselves, that is not a moral argument. It is a leverage attempt wearing a moral argument's coat. A person who uses philosophical frameworks to avoid accountability is not a philosopher. They are someone who found a vocabulary for avoiding accountability and deployed it consistently enough that some people started treating it as wisdom. Scarcity mindset is the enemy of abundance. But it turns out that abundance mindset is also, somehow, the enemy of paying rent, replacing things your dog destroys, acknowledging that your younger brother spent 7 years subsidizing your lifestyle, and doing literally anything that involves delayed gratification or personal responsibility. My new apartment has a deadbolt. Bliss cannot reach the handle. That's where things stand. Thanks, Reddit, for being the audience for this and for the push to finally do the thing I should have done 2 years ago. For everyone asking about the research platform, it's still early stage, probably another year before anything worth showing publicly. But it's moving. Dreams, as it turns out, do not have expiration dates.